Our paper is titled Domain Adaptation Under Behavioral and Temporal Shifts for Natural Time Series Mobile Activity Recognition. The problem that we're studying is human activity recognition for mobile data where labels are not always available, and our goal is to boost the performance using unsupervised domain adaptation. This figure summarizes the overall problem and solution approach. Shown on the left, in unsupervised domain adaptation, we have a set of source domains with labeled data and a target domain containing only unlabeled data. And the goal is to develop a classifier that performs well on the target domain. Shown in the middle, adversarial domain adaptation attempts to solve this problem by training a domain-invariant feature extractor, enabling the task classifier to generalize well to the target domain. In addition, we leverage contrastive learning, shown on the right. This operates on pairs of examples, here looking at two classes, work and exercise. For a query example, in this case with label work, contrastive learning pulls the representation toward that of a positive or same labeled example, and also pushes the representation apart from a negative, different labeled example. We collected unscripted smartwatch data in two different groups. A data set from 15 younger adults using motion and location data with 6 different activity categories, and another data set from 30 older adults extending this to 9 different categories. Starting with CODATs as a baseline, we use a feature extractor with 1D convolutions to convert the raw time series data to a representation space, and then a multi-class domain classifier to adversarially predict the domain of the data, and a task classifier to predict the activity labels. This is similar to domain adversarial neural networks, or DAN. We also incorporate contrastive learning by adding a contrastive head with an info-NCE supervised contrastive loss, and this pulls together source domain examples with the same label and pushes apart source domain examples with different labels. We select a query example and create corresponding positive and negative sets from these same or different labeled examples. For each query example, we minimize this loss, which is based on the info-NCE loss. And finally, given our feature extractor, contrastive head, and query sets and corresponding positive and negative sets, we can construct the overall objective that we add and minimize. Finally, we can also include weak supervision if additional information is known about the target domain, such as label distributions that might be obtained through self-report. For example, if you ask, how many hours did you sleep last night when collecting the dataset? We can leverage this using a KL divergence regularization term that we can add to the objective function. This term aligns the predicted task classifier's label distribution for the target domain with a known target domain label proportion distribution. And the objective function is shown here. In our experiments, we performed 2 different types of adaptation, cross-person transfer and also cross-time transfer. For cross-person transfer, we trained on labeled activities for in-source domains, in other words, the people in the dataset, and test on a holdout person averaged over 3 random cases. For cross-time transfer, we trained on 1 week, tested on a separate week, and averaged over all the participants. We also measure the variance in terms of Euclidean distance and find much higher variance between people in the 2 real-world data sets that we have collected. Shown here are the results for the baselines no adaptation and CODATs, in addition with our method CALDA, and the latter to both with and without weak supervision. Interestingly, CODATs actually performs worse than no adaptation for the more challenging older adult dataset. However, by leveraging contrastive learning, CALDA is able to outperform both baselines. Also, we found that performance degrades as the time gap increases, demonstrating that real-world data has concept drift. To conclude, in this work, we demonstrate that robust human activity recognition methods in naturalistic settings with limited ground truth labels benefit from unsupervised domain adaptation, and the methods are further improved by contrastive learning and weak supervision. And future work includes designing more sophisticated time series specific domain adaptation strategies to address the large domain gaps that occur in realistic human activity recognition datasets.